I'll tell you what, I think we've got a quorum. Let me go ahead and share my screen. And let's get this ready to go. We're going to talk about the commodity death spiral today. Probably won't take us too terribly long, but I'd like to preface it a little bit with some research that we're in the middle of doing right now. I find it quite interesting. But Scott and I put together a survey. We got great response, over 650 business professionals responding. And it's all about leadership practices, not just B2B, but leadership of business in general. And we got a lot of good different company sizes there, some small, some very large. We got responses from public and private companies, so most based in the US, but a lot in Europe and some in the other regions as well. And then B2B and B2C were represented by this thing. And we'll be publishing more on this coming later. I will give you maybe one of the punchlines, and that is, it doesn't really matter too much about how big your company is, whether it's publicly or privately owned, where it's headquarters, or what you sell. It's really more about your leadership and how they approach this whole matter of leadership, if you're interested in organic growth. Now, as part of that, we did a little bit of digging in to a number of different areas. What are leaders' duties, job description, business goal, time horizon, and so forth. And the thing I'd like to zero in a little bit on here today is the time horizon, specifically commodity death spiral. But I want to kind of surround that just a little bit more with some background here. So first of all, let's see what the research showed here. We asked the respondents, how often does your company implement near-term cost controls, spending freezes, travel bans, and so forth? Now, here were the possibilities we gave them, right? And when we got responses back from companies that were growing faster than their competitors, it was kind of balanced. You know, about half of them said, it's about right. 31% said it's too often. There were not too many, 10% who said it wasn't enough, okay? And then some said seldom or never. So that was okay, not bad. But then when we got responses back from those who said, to self-assess, they were growing slower than their competition. Whoa, my goodness, look how out of balance it is. Well over half of the respondents say, hey, you know what? These things are happening too often. Now let's explore a little bit more why they might have said that. Why is it a problem for them? I think it's because it causes growth dampening second order effects. And let me explain what I mean by that. Whenever you change a system, you're going to have the first order effect. That's what you're looking for, right? But you will also have some second order effects. And so you need to be thinking about those as well, okay? And so what would it be in the case of new product development? Well, imagine this for a moment, if you will. Imagine leadership freezes spending so they can meet their earnings target. Great, that's wonderful. But they slowed dozens of projects as teams were waiting to run outside lab tests, hire technicians, interview customers, and so forth, right? Now, because of this, that's obviously going to delay the revenue coming from those new product introductions. That's going to lead to poor earnings growth. Now, what do? Do we freeze spending again? And so this is a situation a lot of businesses find themselves in. Now, on top of that, have you ever heard this at a financial review? Well, here's why we got problems. It's all those crazy spending freezes we've been doing the last several years. I was in businesses for 29 years before we started the AIM Institute. I never heard that. Maybe you did, but I think we have really two problems here. The first I call first domino fixation. Leaders are fixated on, oh my goodness, we got to meet those earning targets, freeze the spending, and they forget about the second order effects. And then when they're in those meetings and they're failing to think about how they got there, they got first domino amnesia. So those are a couple of problems that we see. So that kind of sets us up for what we're billing is the topic of today, which is the commodity death spiral. And so here's how it works. Let's imagine you've kind of incrementalized, you haven't really invested in new product development, you got a bunch of Me Too products. which means they're interchangeable with your competitors' products. Now, this has not gone unnoticed by your customer purchasing agents. What do? Well, since they're interchangeable, there's only one variable left, right? What is it? It's price. So they push you hard and you have to lower your pricing. Now, when you lower your pricing, obviously that comes out of your margins. So you're going to have lower profitability. And now it's budgeting time. And it turns out your boss is very interested in what your budget will be for next year. So you say, hey, boss, I got to tell you, we have lower profits. So you know what we're going to do? We are going to have a lower budget for next year. That's where we're going. So is that what you tell your boss? I'm guessing maybe no. Instead, what you're going to want to do is figure out a way of still hitting the budget. Now, if you can't raise your price, the only thing you have left is reducing your costs. Now, are you going to let go of your sales force? No, you are not, because you need them next year to even have a chance of making your budget. So what are you going to cut? Hey, what about those R&D guys? We don't need them next year. And those marketing folks and product managers, we could probably get rid of them too, right? So that's what you cut. Now, what this means is you have even less new product development capability the next year. That means you have fewer options to grow. And as this spiral continues, your business eventually either dies or it goes on life support, where it's really no longer relevant at all. So this is what we've coined the commodity death spiral. Unless you guys want to, I won't ask you who's been on the commodity death spiral, but I think many of us have been in a situation where we can see the signs of a commodity death spiral, and it all comes back to poor leadership, in my view. So, but let's do one more thing, maybe one or two more things. And I apologize, that was my phone going off. I forgot to turn it off. But is there any evidence that moving to more of a longer term behavior instead of this short term first order fixation, does it really work? Does it make a difference? Well, there's a wonderful article that was published in Harvard Business Review a few years ago. And this research showed that companies who exhibit long-term behavior So basically, these companies had 47% higher revenue, and they had 36% higher earnings, and they had a higher market cap. Their company was worth more. And look at this, 132% higher job creation. So what we're seeing is longer term behavior is rewarded financially. You just have to wait for it. So even because we have these results, that research has been out for some time, many leaders continue to hit the brakes. Travel bans, cost cutting, hiring freezes, reorganizations, layoffs, and so forth. I had one client every year, I'm not kidding you, every year for many, many years, they would say, Dan, we need to get our training done in the first half of the year because there will be freezes in the second half. They just didn't know if it was going to be August or July or September, but every year. Like, this is absolutely no way to run a company. So that's what we see. Now, granted, some near-term measures may be called for. I'm not saying that if you have a major economic meltdown, you don't have to take some measures. Maybe there are layoffs, maybe there are some freezes. But what I'm saying is, for the most part, companies should be much less fixated on those near-term noise rumblings and responding like this. Instead of being like a kayak where they're shifting for every single current change, they ought to be more like an icebreaker and really build long-term growth capability. This last part may sound a little unkind, but frankly, some leaders could accelerate their growth by staying home. They just got their hands on the wheel too much. They're making too many adjustments. What they should be doing is arming and equipping their troops to understand customer needs and get out of the way, frankly. So that's about it. Couple things here just by interesting side notes. Remember before I talked about near-term cost controls being overused. Slow growth companies said that a lot more than others. On average, 36% of subordinates said near-term cost controls were overused. But here's the punchline. Even more senior leaders said these cost controls were overused. So, I mean, they know what they're doing. They know it's wrong, right? But they're still doing it. So that's what I had for a little overview presentation. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the, I'll back out of the slide share. I can go back in if we need to. But I just wanted to share that with you. I don't have a lot more, but maybe I'll open it up. Are Scott and I the only ones who've seen the commodity death spiral, or has anybody else noticed this as well? Maybe you've all been very fortunate and you've worked with companies that don't do that. Or maybe you don't want to. I guess we are recording this, right, Scott? So I'm going to push the issue here.
Well, there's something you'll often hear, and somebody says it, and it's like, well, the only thing my customers care about are lower price, and I just do this because it's not, that means you're not providing them any value. They're telling you you're not providing them any more value, therefore they just assume go somewhere else, and the only way you're going to win their business is with a lower price. So it's stated as if it's just something inevitable within the market. That's not the case. I mean, look at something like, the most commodity-like things, when something becomes good enough, like gasoline becomes good enough, right? I mean, as far as how it performs in our vehicles, so we tend to focus on price. But what do at least like the Exxons try to do? Well, they look at the experience of purchasing gasoline with cards, with all these. There's like, I don't know if you ever use it, but you have some kind of little key fob to make it easier to pay, and they've got little entertainment for you. So they sell advertisements. So they're selling advertisements that you have to watch while you're a captive person there. So they've looked at the gases that they're not, and they've even tried. You might have seen, I'm not sure how international thing this is, but in the US they've at least tried to say, hey, our fuel makes will additionally clean your engine. And if you believe that, then that's something else, but they're at least trying to add value in other ways. And that's a pretty extreme example of a commodity. And I think almost anything else we sell, if the thing becomes good enough, it's usually the services around it that are not good enough. There's always a place to innovate.
We have a client that makes argon and oxygen and acetylene and nitrogen, and they're not coming up with new argon these days. It's kind of like argon is argon. That's and right. Yet they did wonderful blueprinting interviews all over Asia and found all kinds of ways they can improve the way they service and supply the gases and so on and so forth. So I would agree with you, Scott. If somebody says all my customer wants is lower price and better delivery times, that means your customer's given up on you, and that's not their fault. That's our fault. Somebody else will figure out a way of innovating for them. Very good. Excellent. Any other thoughts anybody has? Hey, what have we got the next time coming up here, Scott? And feel free, anybody, if you have anything else on this, jump in. But let me just go out here and let's just take a quick peek, because you guys ever remember a show called the Click and Clack, the Tappet Brothers? It was on NPR. Yeah. Where they'd always talk about how to repair cars. Anybody remember that? Well, they would always have the puzzler from last week. And one of the guys, Ray, could never remember what it was. I feel like Ray. I can never remember what the next one's going to be. So let's go out to, oops, here we go.
They would end by saying, well, you've wasted another hour with us.
Exactly. Perfectly good hour you wasted. In this case, it wasn't a full hour. Here we go. Let's see what we got coming up. So next time we get together, we will have a little quick one on, this is a good one, debunking the fast follower strategy. Scott and I were on a call with somebody, and somebody goes, well, we like to use a fast follower strategy. And they didn't know, but they got Scott going on that one. Boy, that was a mistake. You were very kind during the meeting, right, Scott?
I was kind during the meeting, but people use this as an excuse to not interview customers. And anyway, so I've sort of made my statement in an article, and surprisingly, all of a sudden it's one of our more popular articles. So yes. Written out of no SEO strategy, but just sort of a little bit of like, wow, that's no strategy at all.
Yeah.
It's used as an excuse. It'd be one thing if it was real, if they really were, but it's used as an excuse. But the problem is if you don't understand so here's the synopsis, and I hope this doesn't mean you don't come, but if you don't understand customer needs, who are you gonna follow? Who are you gonna ignore? Who are you gonna copy? You have no idea if you don't understand what the customer needs are. So it's not that it couldn't be a valid strategy, but it's not an excuse to not understand customer needs.
Yeah, that's right.
That's
So
the
come back.
come back anyway, and I'll say the same thing, but for like 15 or 20 minutes.
Well, and there's a little bit more too that you'll add too, because I've heard you go into this as well,
Yeah.
but that's a big part of it. Well, excellent. Well, listen, I think any last questions or observations or anything from anybody before we sign off for today? As the Tapper brothers would say, you've wasted a perfectly good 17 minutes. No, thanks so much for joining us. It's always good to get together with you guys. We'll have more to talk about next time. And if you have any questions or problems on your blueprinting projects or anything like that, bring them along. We're not going to drag these meetings out if we don't need to, but hopefully, somewhere along the line, you're going to get some valuable content that you'll be able to use. All right. Thanks, everybody. Have a
Thanks,
really
Dan
good
and Scott.
Monday.
Happy
Hope you
weekend.
feel better, Dan.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
Take care.
that.